following program is brought to you by the Internet Broadcasting Organization.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Mama J Speaks Unlimited. We're coming today from 2 to 3, a couple minutes beforehand, because we have a wonderful guest. We're going to be talking about what a lot of people have a hard time talking about, and that is grief and the process of losing a loved one. With me today, we have, or I have, I always speak with many people because I have the guardians too. Marieke van Donkersgoed. She's a Dutch native. She's a certified holistic neuro-linguistic life coach and death doula. And she has moved here permanently to the U.S. in 2001. So she is officially a transplant. And she was also up in Wisconsin, because that's where what she had shared with us earlier is what a lot of Dutch people end up going, right?
A lot of, yeah.
That
area, yeah.
She has been a real estate broker and the owner of a holistic wellness center in Washburn, Wisconsin as well. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Happy to be here.
Yes, absolutely. Today we're going to be talking about what she does. She does the end-of-life coaching through the mental, emotional, and spiritual care for the dying and their close circle of family, friends, and what have you. So, to get started, you became a certified linguistic life coach and hypnotherapist back in 2010, and then you also ended up dealing with your own mother's death and dying.
Correct. Yes.
So go through for us that experience that led you to you definitely deciding to be an end-of-life coach and doula.
Okay. I think that it was really a chain of events that started 54 years ago when I was born. I was born into a very left-brain family, very intelligent people. We had a lot of opportunity to explore the world through travel, a lot of beautiful benefits in many, many ways. I always, however, felt that I was a little bit of an odd duck, I guess, because I'm more of a right-brainer. So a lot of times it felt a little bit lonely as to where am I in this family and in this world, and how does it not fit? And I guess that through some of my own personal events in my life, I guess I figured out that there was a different way to look at life, and that put me on the path of holistic approach to life and to being human. Mm-hmm. So one thing then led to another. I started reading books, and I started understanding that philosophy and to look at my life that way. And I became very interested in how that worked for other people. So that led to the life coaching. Once I got it figured out, I figured I want other people to understand a holistic approach to life.
Right. Because once you figure yourself out, you can help everybody else figure themselves out.
Especially when it feels so good to finally figure that out.
Yes.
So when I was doing the life coaching, that was wonderful, and I really enjoyed helping people through changes, whether they were changed by choice or changes that came on their life path. Mm-hmm. And but I never felt that real, true inner fulfillment, like that place where you feel, okay, I've arrived where I need to be in this lifetime.
The full-on purpose, this is what I got to do,
exactly.
This is what I'm here for.
I felt that I was totally in the flow, but I hadn't arrived at my point of destiny, you know?
Right.
And so then, out of the blue, my mother was diagnosed with a terminal cancer, and literally out of the blue. She was probably the most vital 83-year-old you would ever know.
Wow.
She was in the Netherlands while I was living in Wisconsin, and her dying wish was to be at home. Now, the only way to make that possible would be if someone were there for her.
24/7.
Correct. I have 5 siblings, but everyone has busy lives and families. And I was, coincidentally, at a point in my life that I could actually leave for however long it would be. Of course, I had to say goodbye to my husband and son for a while, but I knew that that was temporary. And so I flew to the Netherlands and I took care of her. And in that process really was when I arrived at that point of destiny. And I felt through helping her and understanding also, again, from a holistic standpoint, what was happening to her, sharing with her my own skills, made that process really a very beautiful, beautiful process that I wished for everyone to have. And that then led to studying more about what is the death process, how can we look at that, how can I learn more, take different trainings then to be more all-round prepared to help people through that process. And that's where I arrived at the end-of-life coaching.
Oh, beautiful. And so you actually are with, this is your company, Cypress Healing.
Correct.
End-of-life coaching. And she does have a website that is being featured on as you're watching and everything. There's also a call-in number as well, 813-639-8225. I believe that's the right number. I'm still remembering numbers.
I hope it is.
At any rate, you can actually email Marika if you are going through the process where you might be at the hospice level, because you've worked with hospice. Yes?
Actually, I consider the people that I work with hospice. However, hospice has requirements. Hospice wants to see a death expectancy, so concluded by a physician, of 6 months or less. Now, we all know that that's a difficult thing to pronounce, I guess, and
dictate more or less.
To dictate, yeah. I think that what in my work is very important, that people are clear-minded yet, and that they probably are just going into the shifting mentally, emotionally from being alive forever, as we think it, to coming to terms with the fact that, no, we're not going to be alive forever. That takes a lot of mental, emotional shifting, and that is often a long time before the physical decline,
right?
And that people are willing, I should say, and ready to say, okay, I'm dying and I need hospice care. I'm a huge advocate for hospice because they have services that are beautiful and very much needed, but people tap into that too late overall.
Right.
I feel that my work is beforehand and can go all the way through the hospice period.
Oh, okay.
But I feel that because the shifting, really where I feel that it's most necessary, where I felt it in my own experiences with people in my close circle, is that when someone receives a terminal diagnosis, there's this black hole, and there's not really anyone to turn to because your physician has given you the message. Then you have this phase of, okay, what am I going to do? What treatments are available to me? Do I want treatment? Am I going to let it ride its course? And am I okay with surrendering to the fact that I'm dying? There's nobody really there. You're not ready for hospice yet. The doctor doesn't have someone in his office that takes care of you that way. And that's where I really feel.
Yeah, so you really are the midwife for people to transition into their next phase of life, being that we lose our physical bodies ultimately, but the soul, the spirit is what continues on. And so in essence, your services are to help bring people to terms with that process and to help them go into that next step. You can email Marika at cypresshealing@gmail.com or visit her at www.cypresshealing.com as well. But so what is ultimately that you would like to see occur while you're here in Florida and you're doing this type of work? Because it's not like everyone knows of an end-of-life coach, and you're one of the very few probably throughout this area.
I actually believe I'm the only one in this area. that does this work the way I do it. I think a big part of my work is educating and making people more comfortable, first off, talking about death and dying, which is inevitable for all of us. Thankfully, I come from a culture where death and birth are both much more in the home and much more of a family event rather than a medical event. So I'm a little bit more used to the topic, and it's less taboo where I come from. What I would like to see happen is that I have speaking engagements. I don't care where it is, because everyone is my potential client.
Right.
Not only to benefit my business, but more to benefit everyone in the discussion and being more open about the subject. When I have talked to families that I've served, later on, I understand that if they come into a situation like they've been through, they already feel much more at ease and become more helpful to their circle.
Right, right.
So, it's kind of a ripple effect. Once I've been able to kind of get people into that comfort zone around death and dying, it seems to ripple into their families, and that's what I would like to see happen for everyone.
Right. So did you spend any time studying any type of books or anything about death and dying in any capacity?
I do that all the time. It really is the only thing I read about anymore, because there is so much there to know, and also there are as many unique death situations written up as there are people in the world. I mean, no death is the same as another. And so, yes, studying goes on. I did a death doula training.
Oh.
The death doula training, a little bit earlier, you spoke about the midwife. The midwife is typically someone who is medically trained. I am not medically trained. The doula is the servant, typically a little bit more known in situations around birth. So it's the servant to the mother during childbirth, and it really pertains to keeping the mother comfortable and stress-free. So the death doula training then is the same thing. You keep the dying comfortable and stress-free, and you can do that through many different modalities, of which a lot of I do master. Just to make that, when someone is stress-free, their physical body relaxes and everything becomes easier. We know that in every aspect of life.
Most definitely.
So the death doula training, I took that training because I wanted to be, again, an all-round expert for this phase of life. And the death doula training really focuses on the practical aspects.
Okay.
So that was a nice add-on to what I already knew. So that is a study that I took. I'm constantly doing a chaplain's training right now, because that is a different way, a little bit of looking at the spiritual side when I'm connected with people that are more religiously spiritual, which of course there's a lot of overlap.
Yeah,
there,
you're an ordained minister.
I am.
That I read about.
Yes. And that is in a holistic assembly, so that's pretty wide.
So then with that ordination under your belt, and then adding your chaplaincy, and then adding the fact that you're the doula, the servant, I went with midwife only because when I had a kid, I had a midwife.
Fabulous. Good for you.
The very first one. So I associate doula, midwife, one and the same. But thank you for clarifying. Regardless, it educates everybody, and I always open that up for everyone. I don't ever try to act like I'm an expert in anything. I might know a lot of things, like we all do, but I allow the experts to go ahead and really feed into it and tell what is necessary and everything. So thank you very much for sharing with that. So do you plan on creating any type of classes for people, or are you just looking specifically for clientele that you can go to?
I think my path is wide open. Like I said before, there's a lot of educating needed to get people more into a comfort zone around this subject matter. I am doing workshops. I'm writing workshops. I'm writing a book.
Oh, you are? Good. Yes. That was my next question. So when's your book coming out?
Oh, well, Ask Spirit. I'm downloading, so
Beautiful.
Yep, it's going to take a little time, and stuff like that really needs to slowly percolate, I believe, and it has to be right before you publish it. So I'm taking my experiences, and I'm taking what I download from Spirit to see that I can create somewhat like a manual for people, a kind of a guideline, which is difficult because, again, every death is unique.
Oh, definitely. Like a fingerprint.
Exactly. As much unique as we are as people. Yep. So, no, it's wide open. I'm going into anything that I feel is beneficial to bringing this more out into the public. Of course, I'd love to have clients. However, I never take on more than 5 to 6 clients, depending on where they are in the process, because I believe that my availability is the strength of my business. Hospice is a lot of people. It's kind of like the rotator door effect.
Oh, yeah. Well, are you going to be done? No, you're not ready for hospice.
It's a big organization, and that comes with responsibilities for the people that work in it. I feel that at the basis of hospice care, meaning the care for the terminally ill, is to be available and to become a companion on that journey, and to be available whenever they need it.
Right.
And of course, death doesn't go on a schedule.
No.
And to make sure that availability is there for my clients, I have very few families at the same time that are in the same part of the process. So
yeah, last year when I had lost my father, I had already instinctively, that intuition had kicked in. I had actually moved from Orlando back into town. Was not really sure why. I just knew I was guided to come back. I just knew it was time for me to reunite with my family. And I can honestly say that spending that time with my dad, it was a very healing experience, because I didn't always have the best relationship with my dad growing up, and he was my stepfather on top of that. So, and my siblings were my half siblings. So being with him and trying to encourage him, but he was a stubborn guy, just like the rest of us kids. It was just really good to be there for him and heal. So I wasn't to the point when I was younger, because I always imagined, when things would happen to parents, kind of prepare myself. Back when I was much younger, I felt like, oh, well, I can't wait, and he's such a da-da-da-da, and blah, 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 blah. But I can honestly say that when he did pass, I was at such a peaceful place, and I feel like he was as well. So I was sad to see him go, but I was also happy he was no longer suffering.
Well, you're touching on a couple of very, very important points right here pertaining to my work. First off, your intuition. You are a very spiritually connected person, and by being so, you are connected with your dad at all times. And you were before his death. So for you to have that intuition that it was the right time to be with him physically, to heal, which is another beautiful thing that you touched upon, because in this process, this is the process where our whole life comes to a bottleneck. We know that. This is the time for resolve, for reconciliation, for forgiveness. And in order to do those things, to really benefit, you have to be in relationship. So to be together in a family setting or in a friendship setting, that depends on what your close circle would be when you are the dying one. It is so beautiful to see when people open up to that loving support and openness to one another, that in the dying is the healing. I always say love is the fuel of dying. The more love, it seems like, the easier and the smoother the actual death happens. So how beautiful, and I congratulate you that you had that experience in that way, because that's going to help you to talk to other people about that process and make it less fearful. It really is about the fear that we distance ourselves from it.
Definitely. And because of my intuition, that I finally, after so many years, kept ignoring. And now I'm finally like always about what my intuition is telling me. When I was with my dad, like, no family is perfect by any means, but knowing that my dad and I had some really, really heart-to-heart talks that when I was growing up, it was very difficult to have. So it's like we made up for that.
Mm-hmm.
And he did everything he could to make up for that. And I would just ask him straight on questions. Pops, do you want to live? Because if you want to live, we're all here for you. We want to support you. Da, 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 da. But if you want to go, it's okay too. I'll support you. I'll love you no matter what.
Right.
And so he went through what he went through. It was more for a broken heart because we had lost another. Like that year was like family members decided to go bye-bye. So it was just one thing after another. But I know my dad is always with me. I know all my loved ones are with me. I, in theory, see them.
And I think you do.
So,
can I just touch upon that just real quick, what you just said about the letting go part, the spiritual connection part. I like to always compare the really the real close end when you know that things are really going to start happening soon. It seems like for the dying, all those things that were so important throughout life. And you just said something about, you had some strong heart-to-hearts with your dad and that it was time to reconcile and forgive, all those things. It seems like everything that is really important in human being, as a verb, being human.
Right.
It peels off. It's like the layers of an onion. You peel off those layers and this beautiful spiritual core rises, and I think that so far, all the people that I have been close to that have passed, that was all that remained. And as that spiritual core became stronger and more visible to the people around them, that softening happens. And all that space for forgiveness happens. And that's why it's so important to be in relationship around death. Because not only does it free the person who is departing to smoothly transition. I always like to see it as a butterfly breaking
out of the cocoon,
out of its chrysalis, and just fluttering off. That's how I experience it, almost physically, when I watch someone pass. But also for the people that are around them, it's a time that they are freed of what would have been guilt through the grieving process. Right. And that is such a beautiful thing. I always love to tell people a lot of the grieving can happen prior to death. And that, again, is through relationship.
Ooh, do we have some grieving?
Well,
it was a very intense. And then what I realized is that each one of us in our family connected with my dad at different time frames. And ultimately, my mother, I stepped away because me being the oldest, there's always that heavy responsibility that goes on every oldest sibling. And so I paid attention to what everything was going on, and I knew when to step back and allow everybody else their time with him and their connection. And so ultimately, I wasn't with him in the room when he passed. My mother was, but I knew it was going to happen. And I told my mother, like we had talked probably hours or days, I said, Dad's going to be going soon. And just be prepared and, just make sure you let him know that you love him no matter what. Because she was dealing with grief and she did not want to acknowledge at the time that something was really wrong with her husband, my dad, even though my intuition, I was giving everyone the answers. I was letting them know what was going on with them. But it was just an amazing experience. So I was so thrilled to know that, oh my gosh, there's actually an end of life coach. And it's just been so wonderful to meet you and for you to share your story, allow other people to share their stories, but also have a way for families to find a way to reconnect so they can have that forgiveness, so they can go through the grieving process and not be ashamed of it. Exactly. And not want to stuff it down, because in our society, that's what we're always rushed into. Get rid of the grief because it hurts too much. Get rid of this, get rid of that. Yes. Let's scoot it away and stuff. So
yeah, you're very right about that. I think there's very little time and space for grief, where we really grieve in many, many ways throughout life, not only for loss of a loved one. Grief actually occurs through loss of a marriage, through divorce, or loss of a pet can be huge. An empty nest can bring grief for a mother. A lot of changes in life pertain to grieving in some kind of way. So I also do a lot of work around grief. I have a group that is open to people that are grieving any type of loss,
relationship, job, children, marriage,
whatever
it is.
Money.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
We grieve over money a lot.
Oh, yes. Most definitely.
Yes.
Most
and after
definitely.
the big crashes, I think a lot of people grieve a lot of how their money represented their futures.
Oh, yeah.
And they lost a lot of money.
And their identity. Totally their identity as well. Yep. That is something else that I've experienced in my life as well. So when people do share their stories about what they've lost, I do understand, because I totally understand where my mom is at with grieving my dad, because the relationship I had with the man that brought my youngest son into the world, that was a very, very deep rooted relationship. And when that no longer was, it totally shattered my soul. And it took because I'm back together now, but it did shatter my heart. It did shatter my soul. I thought I was going to die. I literally physically thought I was going to die. Mm-hmm. And I had said to my mom, if Dad and you had just divorced, think of how you would feel. I said, but you actually physically having him no longer with you and how you feel, that is how I feel about knowing that person is still technically around, but that relationship and everything we had is totally gone.
Right.
And that is something that people in our society, when relationships like that end, they just want to,
losing a loved one, especially when someone passes, but in many other ways also, it literally breaks your heart. Mm-hmm. It is a physical pain that you feel when you lose something that is so dear to you. Mm-hmm. And interestingly, the work around grief is work that you do with that specific organ. Love is what you use. Love and compassion for yourself is what is necessary to go through the grief process. And the grief process is not a journey from A to B.
Oh, no.
You have to look at that as it will never be what A was.
No,
life will never
won't
be the same. You will get eventually to the other side of your grief work, but that's going to be in place B. And you're going to get to learn with a new normal.
Exactly.
Your old normal is no longer. You have to learn to live with your new normal. I spoke to a person a couple of months ago who had had a devastating loss in their life and he said, it took me 5 years to kind of become somewhat functional again. Yep. But I had to learn to live with a limp. I could walk again, but I had to learn to walk with a limp. And I thought that was just such beautiful analogy, because that is what it is. Mm-hmm. And some people could run marathons with a limp.
Right.
But it's going to be that limp that they have to learn to live with. So you're very right. The heart is broken. Again, grief is also as individual as we are as people. Mm-hmm. There are many books written, great books written about grief work. I have my favorites in that work. What I really focus on the most.
What are your favorites?
My absolute favorite is Dr. Alan Wolfeld.
Okay.
He wrote a book, Understanding Grief, and his starting point is that if you would draw grief, it would be a starting point and then scribble, scribble, scribble all over the place like a wilderness, like you have no idea what is where. And then somewhere out of that big knot
is the line.
Is the little line on the other side. So
I think I've done that. I went through a healing process with Dr. Michael Rice's techniques. I don't know if you've ever heard of him.
I don't think so.
And yeah, went through, and that was like, yeah.
I think everybody that goes through grief actually recognizes that picture because it really works that way. So what I wanted to say was every grief is unique, and allowing yourself time and allowing everything that happens to be normal. You're not going crazy. And no, you don't have to be back to work and back to normal in a month's time. I've heard people that heard other people say to them, "Are you over it yet? Can we get back to normal?" And that too is a really something in our society that we should learn
to have more tolerance.
Not to allow people to just be, and especially allow yourself to be when you go through grief. Allow everything to be exactly the way it comes to you, and open your own heart. It's hard because that heart's hurting, but that is really the organ where the work happens.
Absolutely. So. I mean, it's truly amazing how all the experiences that I've been through, from a relationship loss, I've lost children through miscarriages, I've lost a baby nephew that was amazing. I've lost as well. How I've looked at myself of how I deal with grief, and how I've had to learn how other family members deal with grief, and to be okay with myself and all okay with them as well. And then once you do go through that process, then that's how you learn to be compassionate to other people.
Absolutely.
Because all of a sudden I've had some friends from back in high school come back into my life, and like, she has expressed how she's lost her dad. Bam. Right there with her. Totally understand. She's beating herself up. I'm like, don't beat yourself up. It's perfectly all right where you're at. You're grieving. Just be with it. Mm-hmm. If you postpone grief, it'll sneak around and find another way to get you.
Yep, it's laying on that blown up beach ball in the pool. You can lay on it and push that ball down as long as you want, and as long as you
But it does. It's
going to pop up. You're going to have to deal with it. And grief really can settle in your physical body in ways that it's going to give you a lot of physical problems. So yes, allow grief, let it come up. Join a group where you can uplift each other, where you can share stories so you know you're not going crazy. This is the process. Why we have to go through it as humans, someday we're going to know the answer to that part. But yes, absolutely. Allow it, and allow yourself the time and the grace and the compassion for self. Absolutely.
Fantastic. So, a little bit of wanting to know, does it matter to be religious or to be spiritual to go through this process?
It doesn't matter. And I want to emphasize on the fact that religious and spiritual are not necessarily
one and the same.
At
all.
You can be very spiritual without being religious. Actually, in my belief, we all are spiritual.
Yes.
Whether we know to name that or not. I've had clients whom I started working with who said, actually, this is one particular person who said, "Oh, I'm not religious and I'm not spiritual." Kind of like, I don't know what you're going to do to me, but I'm not there. And then in the end, he turned out, through connection with nature, to be one of the most spiritual people I probably will ever meet.
Of course.
Except he didn't know how to name that.
Exactly.
So no, I don't believe that it's important to be religious and or spiritual. I believe that when you open up to the process and allow mentally, emotionally what is happening, again, that spiritual core will
just naturally.
It is our natural
engage.
core. It is what we are, really. And that's the holistic principles, again, that we could fill probably 3 hours of your program with.
Right.
So, no, I don't think it's important. I think we are all spiritual. And I believe that if the process is experienced right, that everyone will come to that conclusion, which then brings beautiful lessons, again, to those who are around that.
That'll be amazing and beautiful. So with everything that you have been sharing with us today, would you be wanting to possibly come back in another month or so and share your holistic approaches and everything?
I would love to.
Because I think it's something that would be, it is something that definitely needs to occur. I am definitely a firm believer that people like yourself and I and everybody else that is coming into my circle and I go into their circles, where we are the starseeds, we are the light workers, we're the ones that are really to like be like Tinkerbell and or the fairy godmother. Tink.
I like that. Well, it is a little bit new agey, and I think to the benefit of this movement, so to speak, we have the internet, and there's so much information available. Personally, I feel so blessed to have come across the holistic philosophy because it makes me feel so comforted in a life that's not always easy.
Right.
It really gives me tools to look at my life and say, okay, so how does that work in the bigger picture? And to ask the right questions, which then put me back on my path in a much more positive way.
Right.
So I would love to talk more about
holistic because
principles.
Ultimately, it turns out that holistically, it's the universal laws that have been around since the eons, and our ancient fathers of like, I want to say Einstein. He's kind of ancient, but even
poor guy.
But even before that, Socrates and those people, they knew about the metaphysics. They knew about the holistic approach to living, to the world, and everything, and even Jesus was one of those people that was more holistic. He was metaphysical. And it just amazes me how he's been kind of twisted into something else for people to go in one way or another way.
Right. Well, I think that is whatever works for you.
Mm-hmm.
I think there have been great masters over the millennia.
Who's your favorite?
I don't really have a favorite. Actually, you could be as much of my favorite as Jesus.
Oh, gee, thanks.
Well, really, we are all in this world to learn from one another,
right.
And we come on each other's paths to learn from each other. So that is one of the holistic principles. I think that at the basis of that is if you can understand that you are not a human having a spiritual experience, a human with a soul, so to speak, but looking at your life as I am a spiritual being having a human experience and looking at it that way, so that birth is not necessarily where it starts and death is where it begins or where it ends, but
it continues.
Birth is where you come out from where you belong,
right?
To spend, give or take, 60, 80, 100 years in this earth, on this plane.
I've been slated to live 120.
Well, if that's what you really desire, that's probably what will happen for you. But
as long as I could still look 25, I'm all for it. No.
Well, there we have it again. Age defying and death denying. Let's stay with the topic here.
But, that's just in my little world.
It's fine. It's a big world that you're in with your little world. So.
Absolutely.
Expansion is key.
Exactly. And that's what I definitely feel that my purpose is to expand and help other people to expand. Because I recently dealt with my own death within myself of letting go of an identity that I had for many, many years and coming to terms with that. And then it finally hit me, because as you're part of this new career that I'm embarking upon and everything, finally guided. I spent 15 years massaging thousands of bodies with healing hands. And now my purpose is to massage hearts, minds, and spirits,
Lovely.
the souls, for another 1,000 or more or millions, wherever and however I am supposed to reach people. That's what I want to do. And I realize that I have a quirky little way of doing it, but if it works and it gets people to tune in or gets them to go have a aha moment or whatever, then that's what I feel like, okay, this is what I am here for, and this is why.
I think you're doing an amazing job of it, Jacqueline.
Oh,
Congratulations.
thank you. I really appreciate that. And I really appreciate that you've come on the show today and that you have shared your brilliance and your magnificent spirit that you have. And you being one of those people that you have found who you are meant to be, and you're embracing it and showing people this is how an earth angel comes, and this is how we help each other. And
that is no longer a choice.
No.
I have arrived at my place of destiny, and this is what it's going to be. This is the purpose of my life this time around, and I will do everything in my power to make that available to everyone. So thank you so much for this opportunity.
Absolutely. Gotta wonder, do you believe in past lives or anything like that?
Well, yes, I think that there's too much proof out there to deny it, and in my heart of hearts, I believe that it's true too, because I have wisdom that comes from other times.
Mm-hmm.
And so, to me, yes, that's a proven fact. I'm never going to tell someone that has to be that they look at life or afterlife or whatever. Everyone is entitled to their own way of believing. But yes, I believe that spirits come and go into different lifetimes to learn different lessons. Absolutely.
So who do you think you were in a previous life?
Well, I've done some regressions, so I have some ideas. I don't know how many more there are.
Right.
Some people speak of thousands of lives that one spirit may have, and some people talk about the spirit actually being in different lives at the same time.
Right.
So I don't know, and I really don't care to know how that all works. I know that I've been a Native American girl who passed young on the East Coast. I found this out through a regression probably about 4 or 5 years ago. And when someone told me this, we weren't really working around an issue. It was just very interesting to me. When I was a young girl, and I'm not talking childhood, I would say in my teens, my early teens, I had this reoccurring urge before I went to sleep at night to bring all my dolls and stuffed animals into bed and know that they were, and there was some deep urgency about it. And I never really knew what that was, but it was something that I played out night after night after night when I was really beyond doll and stuffed animal age.
The cool age of having dolls.
And the other thing about that was that when a big storm comes, like, and this is going to be my first summer in Florida, so I'm probably going to have some of these coming.
Have fun.
When that atmospheric pressure starts, I would get this, oh my gosh, is everything tied down? Is everything inside? I get this really weird anxiety that I could never explain. So when I went through this regression, I was told that as a 13-year-old girl, again here, early teen, I was killed in a tsunami-like catastrophe, and I lost my family in that. I was a Native American girl on the East Coast, I was told. And when I was told that, I thought, oh my gosh.
That explains it.
And I wasn't looking for that explanation, but I was like, oh my goodness, that so brings that home for me. So that was my first time that I thought, this is not just something that somebody's telling me. This is for real. So I think anybody who would do that regression therapy, if nothing else, do it for fun.
Oh, yeah.
Because it's really, really fun to find out more about yourself.
Well, I have started to feel that people that have been diagnosed, like with dissociative disorders and multiple personality and stuff like that, that might actually be their other lives still coming through. but they didn't get the wand over them to forget about that.
There's
or
actually
something.
Dr. Brian Weiss. He is an expert, has written amazing books about. There's a book. I'm so bad with titles, but he has a book that is just all these stories of people that what happened to them during regressions, and that brings that home. Exactly that. Why are people suffering with certain anxieties or physical problems? It even talks about coming into the world with a birthmark, and that birthmark would be related to a way that you had suffered physically in a previous life. And Dr. Weiss also has a book, I think it's called Many Lives, Many Masters. Something like that.
That book sounds familiar.
And that is actually the story of one of his patients whom he treated, who brought him to, as a psychoanalyst or psychotherapist, brought him to looking at it in a different way, because she was bringing messages through regression therapy that were not hers.
Right.
So it's amazing stuff. So, yeah.
Absolutely. So do you have any book recommendations for our viewers to consider that are going through the process of, their death and dying of their loved ones or themselves or grief?
There are exceptional books out there. There's a book called Final Gifts, which is beautiful. There's a book called 1 Year to Live. There are the older books. There are so many books out there. So if anyone has a desire to read about any of the subjects that we touched upon, please email me, because I would be more than happy. I have a library full of books. I wouldn't even know where to start on topics and titles and authors, but there's a lot out there, and I can point a lot of people in the right direction if they would want that.
Okay, awesome. Well, thank you again.
You're very welcome.
You've been amazing. I'm just really happy that we were able to get you on the show, and it was your first time doing something like this.
Yes, it was.
So it's amazing. Now you'll be good for all the other shows that you'll be doing, because I just know that's what's going to be happening for you.
Having a conversation with you is going to be easy everywhere.
So once again, everybody, go to cypresshealing.com, and you can email her at cypresshealing@gmail.com. Do you want everybody to know your phone number to call you?
Absolutely. That's my work phone.
Her work number is 715.
Actually, that's not my number anymore.
Oh.
You have my card there, too.
Well, that was the one I called.
Do you want me to just name it? Should I say it?
Yeah, you go ahead, son. It's actually yours.
Okay, great. So a number to call me anytime is 813-336-1598.
Oh.
813-336-1598.
Ooh, that's a secret number. I didn't even know that one.
That's my business number. It's a good number.
That's awesome. Awesome. Well, thank you, everyone, for joining us. Don't be so shy. Call in if you have questions or concerns or just want to kind of vent a little something sometime. But I understand if you're only on a 30-minute lunch break and you just wanted to pop in and pop out. At any rate, have a beautiful, beautiful day. Have a fantastic weekend. And tune back in later on this evening from 7 to 8 as I will have Endless Flow band group on. Thank you so much. Have a beautiful day. Bye.
Bye.
This program was brought to you by the Internet Broadcasting Organization, setting the standard for new media broadcasting.